Millionaire shocked. After a little black girl fixes his Mustang, then he notices her ring. Comment below from which city you're watching and hit the subscribe button. The sun was setting over the rust-streaked streets of Ashford Heights, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. Most people had gone home hours ago, leaving the neighborhood quiet, except for the occasional bark of a dog or the distant rumble of a bus. Alara Benson, just 12 years old, crouched beside a gleaming cherry-red 1967 Mustang. Her hands, small but precise, were smeared with oil and grease, and a rag hung from her pocket like a badge of honor. She had never asked to fix a car in her life, but when Mr. Lionel Hawthorne's prized Mustang broke down right outside her tiny apartment building, she couldn't resist. Lionel Hawthorne, a billionaire who had made his fortune in tech startups and luxury vehicles, was used to people bending over backward to help him. Drivers, assistants, valet attendants. He didn't notice their faces, only their efficiency. But today was different. He watched from the street as Ilara's nimble fingers worked, tightening a bolt here, adjusting a hose there. She hummed under her breath, completely absorbed in her task, oblivious to the tall man in a crisp suit who had stopped his rolls nearby. What are you doing?" Lionel asked, his voice sharp but tinged with disbelief. Ilara looked up, wiped her hands on her jeans, and flashed a grin. "Fixing your car. You left it smoking in the driveway, Mr. Hawthorne." Lionel's eyebrows shot up. He had expected a kid, maybe 10 at most, to poke at the engine and panic. Not this. Not a girl who handled wrenches like a seasoned mechanic. You're young. Very young," he stammered, trying to mask the shock that threatened his composure. Ilara tilted her head, her eyes glinting. "Experience doesn't care about age, sir." He laughed nervously, trying to regain control. This was absurd. A little girl repairing a classic Mustang, her hands black with grease, her confidence towering over him. People like him were used to being the smartest, the fastest, the most powerful. And here she was, rewriting the rules in front of his eyes. Then his gaze drifted downward and froze. On Ilara's left hand, glinting under the fading sun, was a delicate gold ring with a tiny emerald in the center. A ring that shouldn't have been there. Lionel's mind raced. It couldn't be. Could it? Ilara noticed his sudden stare and smiled. A quiet, mysterious smile. "You like it? Found it in the pawn shop near my school. Thought it looked special." Special? It was more than special. That ring was part of a legacy Lionel had thought lost forever. A family heirloom he had believed gone decades ago, stolen during a break-in at his childhood home. His pulse quickened. He took a careful step forward, lowering his voice. "Where did you get that ring?" Ilara shrugged, completely calm. "It found me." And in that moment, Lionel realized that this little girl, 12 years old, bold, fearless, was about to turn his perfect, controlled world upside down. Not just with grease and horsepower, but with a mystery he couldn't ignore. Because that ring wasn't just jewelry. It was a key, and she wasn't just fixing a car. She was fixing a part of his past he never thought he could reclaim. Ashford Heights was not the place people noticed unless they had to. Rusted streetlights flickered on uneven sidewalks, and the scent of exhaust, mixed with faint hints of bakery bread drifting from a corner shop. It was a place of overlooked people, janitors, shopkeepers, single parents, but it was home. Ilara Benson had grown up here, born into a small apartment above a thrift store her mother ran. She was 12, small, wiry, and with hands that seemed older than her years, calloused, nimble, and always busy. From changing a bike chain to repairing broken electronics in the neighborhood, she had a reputation for fixing what others deemed impossible. People whispered that she had the mind of an engineer and the hands of an artist. Her mother, Tanya Benson, worked long hours, leaving Ilara free to explore her fascination with machines, engines, and puzzles. Her mother encouraged curiosity, but never knew how far Ilara had pushed herself. Sometimes late into the night, elbows greased, notebooks full of sketches and notes scattered across the floor. Ilara had learned early that the world often judged before it understood. People laughed at her in the park when she tried to race toy cars she had redesigned, calling her a weird little girl who tinkers too much. She shrugged, smiled, and kept building anyway. Prejudice in her world came early, and often disguised as mockery. Meanwhile, Lionel Hawthorne's world could not have been more different. Towering skyscrapers, black luxury cars, and executive offices with floor-to-ceiling glass walls. His life was controlled, calculated, and curated. A self-made billionaire, he had built his empire from the ground up in tech, investing in electric vehicles and luxury innovations. Perfection, efficiency, and control were his religion. People didn't just work for him, they performed, and their worth was measured in results. Lionel's past was not without pain. His parents had died when he was young, leaving him to inherit a few family heirlooms and a broken house. One of those heirlooms, a delicate gold ring with a tiny emerald, had vanished decades ago, taken in a theft he had never solved. It was a loss he carried silently, tucked beneath his sharp exterior. It was this ring that would eventually connect Lionel and Ilara in ways neither expected. On the day of the Mustang incident, the worlds collided. Ilara's curiosity and skill brought her to a gleaming car that had broken down outside her apartment. Lionel's ego and control demanded that everything around him obeyed his will, including the very machinery he revered. But beneath the surface of their first encounter, tension already rippled. Lionel could not comprehend a child fixing a luxury car without training or wealth. Society had taught him that girls, especially children, didn't belong in mechanics or engineering. Ilara's black identity, while not central at first, became a silent barrier in a world designed to favor people like Lionel, white, wealthy, and connected. And yet, Ilara remained unfazed. Her hands moved confidently over bolts and hoses. Her mind raced, solving puzzles that years of elite schooling could not teach. She didn't care about the crowd's whispers. She cared about the problem, the car, and the small thrill of making something whole again. Lionel, on the other hand, struggled with cognitive dissonance. Everything he had believed about control, talent, and social order was challenged by a 12-year-old girl in worn jeans and sneakers. He wanted to dismiss her as lucky or incidental, but he couldn't. Every turn of her wrench, every click of the bolt, told a story he had forgotten existed, genius in unexpected places. That evening, when Lionel noticed the emerald ring glinting on Ilara's finger, a part of his carefully ordered life shattered. That small piece of metal carried memories, loss, and a mystery that refused to let go. And in that instant, neither of them realized how entwined their fates had become. The day after the Mustang incident, Ashford Heights seemed quieter, but for Ilara, silence was only temporary. Word of the girl who had fixed a billionaire's car had spread fast. Some neighbors whispered with awe, others looked skeptical. A 12-year-old, they said, could not possibly handle such responsibility. But Ilara's hands, stained with grease and determination, told another story. Lionel Hawthorne, meanwhile, could not forget the girl. His orderly life had been disrupted. The memory of the emerald ring haunted him. How could a girl have something so personal, so tied to his past? He kept replaying the encounter in his mind, her confidence, her skill, her unapologetic defiance of every expectation he had about children, class, and gender. A week later, Lionel found himself standing outside Ashford Heights in his polished, black sedan. He had drafted every possible excuse to avoid this encounter, but curiosity, and something unspoken, drove him forward. Ilara was repairing a neighbor's broken scooter when he arrived. She looked up, brushing grease from her face, and smiled without fear. "Mr. Hawthorne," she greeted, as though he were just another neighbor dropping by. Lionel swallowed. Ilara, I wanted to ask you something. About your skills. Your talent. Ilara tilted her head. Talent, or luck. He ignored the jab. Would you consider working with me on a project, a car restoration, a rare prototype I'm building? Her eyebrows lifted. You mean for money? Money, he said, hesitating. But also experience, knowledge, connections. Ilara thought for a heartbeat. The street was emptying, shadows stretching long. Finally, she said, Fine, but on my terms. I do not answer to anyone who underestimates me. And I do not work for people who care more about their ego than the work itself. Lionel smiled, surprised. Perhaps it was the first time in decades that someone had spoken to him without fear. Over the next few days, the workshop became a battlefield of sorts. Lionel, used to control and perfection, expected efficiency and obedience. Ilara, brilliant but untrained in corporate etiquette, worked instinctively, ignoring protocol. She fixed engines in unconventional ways that confounded his engineers. She sketched designs with ideas that defied standard mechanics, but worked flawlessly. She challenged every assumption Lionel made, often leaving him frustrated, fascinated, and increasingly aware of his own biases. The team of engineers murmured, under their breath. Some admired her genius, others resented her age, race, and unconventional approach. Lionel noticed the subtle prejudice, whispered doubts about her capabilities, eye rolls when she suggested alternatives, open mockery in private meetings. Lionel felt an unfamiliar stir of shame. He had always assumed power protected him from reality. But seeing his world react to Ilara, the whispered prejudices, the dismissal of her skill, was a revelation. Late one night, while testing a restored engine, Lionel noticed something glimmering on Ilara's desk. The emerald ring. Where did you really get that? He asked, unable to mask the urgency in his voice. Ilara hesitated, a shadow crossing her face. It belonged to someone who trusted me, someone who said it would find the person who needed it most. Lionel froze. He knew that voice, that phrasing. It echoed his childhood memories of the heirloom stolen decades ago. Could it be? Could fate have brought this girl to him? Not just to fix cars, but to restore what he had lost. Before he could ask more, a loud crash echoed from the workshop. Sparks flew from a metal lathe as one of the engineers, sneering, knocked a wrench onto the floor. Careful, kid, he muttered, or you'll ruin the prototype. Ilara's hands shot to the machine. Step back. I've got this. The engineer laughed, condescending, dismissive. You? What do you know? For a moment, the tension crackled. Ilara, small but fierce, didn't step back. She worked swiftly, her hands dancing over the machine, correcting the misalignment in seconds. Sparks flew as metal clanged. Lionel, watching, felt his chest tighten. The room was silent now, engineers frozen, spectators holding their breath. And then, perfect precision. The machine hummed to life. A mix of shock, awe, and embarrassment rippled through the men. Ilara didn't smile. She simply said, Now it works. Word of Ilara's skill leaked to social media. While many celebrated her, others mocked her youth, race, and gender. Who lets a little black girl touch $1 million prototype? Wrote one commentator. Billionaires hiring kids now? Typed another. Lionel read the posts with a growing sense of responsibility and frustration. He realized the world would never see Ilara's genius without bias interfering. He also realized something else. He was falling into the trap of his own prejudice. He had assumed initially that a child like her could not possibly handle a car. And that assumption had been proven catastrophically wrong. Lionel decided it was time. He arranged a private unveiling of the restored Mustang prototype, inviting investors, journalists, and engineers. He wanted to test Ilara under scrutiny, though he also feared how the world would treat her. The day arrived. Cameras flashed, engines roared, and investors murmured. All eyes were on the girl in overalls, standing nervously beside Lionel. Ilara took a deep breath and began presenting her work. She described the mechanical improvements she had made, her innovative approaches, and the reasoning behind each change. Her voice was confident, precise, yet earnest. A prominent investor sneered, "Are you sure a child is explaining this correctly?" The hall tensed. All attention turned to her, the future of the prototype seemingly resting in her hands. Ilara lifted her chin. "If you doubt my work, test it yourself." The investor scoffed, but allowed it. The prototype started flawlessly. The Mustang roared like it had never roared before, every custom part functioning seamlessly. The room went silent. Then, one by one, applause broke out. But not everyone joined. The wealthy elite murmured, whispering disapproval. Some couldn't accept that a child, a black girl, had accomplished what they thought impossible. Lionel's pulse quickened. Pride mixed with unease. He realized that even if Ilara succeeded, the world might refuse to acknowledge her brilliance. As the Mustang purred, Lionel stepped closer to Ilara and noticed again the glint of the emerald ring. His voice shook, barely above a whisper. "Where did that come from?" Before she could answer, the doors to the workshop burst open. A man in a sharp suit, carrying a letter embossed with a strange seal, demanded to see Lionel privately. The room froze. Ilara's hands clenched. The ring seemed to glow in the light. Something was coming. Something connected to her, the ring, and Lionel's past. And it would change everything. The world they had just begun to navigate together was about to erupt in ways neither could have predicted. The workshop was alive with tension, every fluorescent light casting long shadows across gleaming metal and polished floors. The restored Mustang stood in the center like a jewel, its engine purring confidently under the admiring yet skeptical gaze of investors, engineers, and journalists. But the real center of attention wasn't the car. It was Ilara Benson. 12. Years old, small in stature but monumental in presence, she stood beside the Mustang with her hands slightly shaking. She had spent weeks perfecting every detail of the restoration, calculating, testing, and improvising on the fly. Yet nothing could have prepared her for the moment Lionel Hawthorne had just created, a live demonstration under scrutiny from the world. Lionel's voice cut through the murmurs of the room. "Show them, Ilara. Prove what you can do." Ilara inhaled, steadying herself. The room went silent. Even the skeptical investors leaned forward, curiosity now battling doubt. She touched the car's hood, her fingers tracing the curves and seams, a silent promise that she had done everything possible to ensure perfection. As she started the engine, the roar was deafening. Sparks flickered from the exhaust as the prototype performed flawlessly. Some clapped hesitantly, some gasped in disbelief. But the murmurs of doubt, those rooted in prejudice and social bias, didn't die so easily. Then came the first real test, the investor challenge. "Let's see how it handles stress," one of the investors demanded, a man with a sharp suit and sharper eyes. "If it fails, your story is over." Ilara's pulse quickened. She had run simulations, double-checked the hydraulics, and tested the engine under extreme pressure. But this was different. This was public, and failure carried humiliation far beyond embarrassment. Lionel watched her, silent but tense. He had never felt fear like this, not for himself, but for someone else. And he realized something deep. He had underestimated the world's cruelty. Not everyone would celebrate her genius. Some would try to crush it. Just as the prototype sped down the test track, Lionel noticed the emerald ring on Ilara's finger glinting under the lights. He felt his breath hitch. That ring, the lost heirloom of his family, stolen decades ago, was no ordinary piece of jewelry. "Ilara," he called out quietly, stepping closer. "Where did you really get that ring?" Ilara's eyes flickered, a mixture of pride and fear crossing her face. It belonged to someone who trusted me. Someone who said it would find the person who needed it most." Lionel's heart pounded. His parents, their legacy, the memories of loss, all tangled. Up in that small, unassuming ring, could it be? Could fate have brought the girl who defied the world into his life for more than just a mechanical challenge? Before he could react further, the room erupted. A rival engineer, Cole Danvers, had sabotaged the demonstration, planting a misalignment in the hydraulic system. Sparks flew, smoke curled from the engine. Gasps filled the room. Investors murmured, panic seeping into the air. Ilara's hands shot to the controls. Her mind raced. She had seen this possibility in simulations, but had never faced a real sabotage under pressure. "Step back," she shouted, her voice cutting through fear and chaos. "I've got this." Cole stepped forward, sneering. "A little girl? You can't possibly fix this. You're in over your head." Ilara's jaw tightened. She was small, but her courage was enormous. "I've handled engines bigger than your ego," she snapped. Sparks flew as she worked furiously, her hands a blur. Every bolt, every wire, every pressure gauge was checked, tightened, and recalibrated in seconds. Lionel's chest throbbed. The room watched in silent tension. Some of the investors began to murmur approval. Others were frozen, unable to reconcile. The sight of a young black girl outmaneuvering seasoned professionals. And then, the engine roared back to life. Even louder, smoother, more precise than before. The Mustang leaped forward on the track, flawless in performance. Gasps, applause, shock. Lionel realized the world could not deny what they had just seen, but many would still try to diminish it. Ilara turned to the investors, her voice strong. "Judgment is easy when you underestimate people, but results are undeniable." After the demonstration, Lionel approached Ilara privately. He couldn't contain his curiosity, or his hope. "That ring," he said, voice barely audible. "It belonged to my family. Stolen years ago. How?" Ilara hesitated, then handed him a small envelope. Inside was a letter in faded handwriting, explaining that the ring had been entrusted to someone who could use it to connect the past and future. Someone with courage, skill, and integrity. Someone like her. Lionel's hands shook. He realized she wasn't just a mechanic or a prodigy. She was the key to restoring something he thought he had lost forever: trust, legacy, and hope. But before he could process further, Cole Danvers stormed in, furious that his sabotage had failed. "You'll never make it. People like you, children like you, don't belong here." Ilara's eyes flashed. "People like me? People like you built walls. I break them." She turned back to the Mustang, tweaking a minor adjustment. Sparks flew as Cole lunged, trying to interfere, but in a single fluid motion, Ilara blocked him and finished her work. Lionel realized that courage, determination, and skill outweighed wealth, privilege, and prejudice. The Mustang purred perfectly. Investors cheered, journalists snapped photos, and Lionel felt the weight of decades lift slightly from his shoulders. But outside, a sleek black car pulled up. The doors opened, revealing a figure holding a legal notice, a claim to the prototype, the company, and possibly Ilara's future. Lionel grabbed her hand, urgency in his eyes. "We've proven ourselves today. But the real challenge is just beginning." Ilara nodded, her small hand gripping his. Sparks from the Mustang reflected in her emerald ring, glowing as if signaling the next chapter. The room held its breath. The future of innovation, justice, and destiny hung in the balance. And in that moment, neither billionaire nor child knew who would win or what sacrifices would be required to protect the truth. The black car outside the workshop had caused a ripple of panic, but inside, Alara Benson and Lionel Hawthorne stood tall. Together, they had faced sabotage, prejudice, and doubt, and now they were about to confront the final challenge, the legal claim on the Mustang prototype. The mysterious figure stepped forward, a representative of a rival company, intent on claiming rights to the prototype, citing contracts and ownership disputes, investors murmured, whispers of doubt returning, as if the day's victory could be undone with a single signature. Alara's hands clenched around her tool bag. For a moment, fear threatened to creep in, but she remembered every ounce of preparation, every late night, every moment she had defied expectations. Lionel, watching her, realized that courage was not about age or wealth, it was about conviction. Together they walked forward. Lionel addressed the room first, his voice steady, authoritative, yet tinged with humility. This prototype represents not just innovation, but integrity. Every bolt, every adjustment, every solution came from talent, determination, and passion, not from money or title alone. Alara added, her voice clear and unwavering. We built this together, but I built it honestly, and honesty cannot be claimed by false authority or prejudice. The representative scoffed, but faltered when Lionel calmly presented evidence. Meticulous. Notes, documented work logs, timestamps, and the unmistakable fingerprints and diagrams that proved Alara's originality. The ring, glinting subtly on Alara's finger, seemed almost symbolic, a token of legacy, trust, and authenticity. By the end of the hearing, the claim was dismissed. The investors nodded in respect, journalists scribbled notes, and the rival company retreated, grudgingly accepting the truth. Triumph was theirs, but the true victory was deeper than legality. For Lionel, the events of the past weeks had shattered old notions of control, hierarchy, and bias. He had believed that talent and worth were dictated by wealth, pedigree, and social expectation. But Alara had proven otherwise. He spent quiet moments reflecting on the ring, realizing it symbolized something beyond family legacy. It represented the recognition of hidden potential, courage, and the bridging of worlds that should never have been separated. He called his personal assistant later that evening and instructed her to fund a scholarship for gifted youth in Ashford Heights, ensuring that no child would have to fight for recognition alone. Alara, meanwhile, felt a sense of validation unlike any before. Her talent had been tested not just mechanically, but socially and morally. She had faced discrimination, doubt, and sabotage, and had risen above it with intelligence, courage, and composure. Her confidence grew, but so did her understanding of responsibility. She knew her skill was a gift, and now she understood that how she used it could change lives. Word of the Mustang prototype, Alara's brilliance, and her victory over prejudice spread quickly. The people of Ashford Heights began to view her not just as a local prodigy, but as a symbol of resilience. Neighbors who once doubted her cheered. Children who had been mocked for their talents felt inspired. And even adults began to reconsider their assumptions about age, race, and capability. Schools and local organizations invited her to speak, sharing her story of perseverance. She became a beacon for young people who had been overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed because of their background or circumstances. Lionel, once insulated in his world of glass towers and luxury vehicles, became a champion for inclusion, mentorship, and empowerment. He implemented initiatives at his company to support unconventional talent, ensuring that brilliance would never be ignored due to age, gender, or skin color. As the sun set over Ashford Heights, Alara leaned against the Mustang, looking up at Lionel. He smiled, a rare, genuine smile, and handed her the small gold and emerald ring. "This belongs to you now," he said. "You've earned it, not because of lineage or wealth, but because of your courage, your skill, and your heart." Elara accepted it, her small hands steady. She had repaired more than a car. She had repaired broken assumptions, opened minds, and ignited hope. And as they watched the orange glow of the evening sky reflect off the Mustang, she knew this was only the beginning of her journey. The final lesson lingered in the air. True greatness isn't inherited or purchased. It's earned through courage, determination, and the refusal to be limited by the world's narrow expectations.